The Indianapolis Colts elected to bring back Shane Steichen despite a third of the NFL firing their head coach this offseason. Was it the right call? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network around. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident Phil nerd at HorseshoeHuddle.com, and I'm joined, as always, by Jake Arthur, the boots on the ground over at Round Table Sports. Today, we are going to dive into Shane Steichen, and we're kind of gonna smash together a couple topics with this, where one, it's like a year in review of Shane Steichen, but also within the context of a third of the NFL fired their head coach this all season, and kind of the pros of keeping Shane Steichen, the cons of keeping Shane Steichen, kind of what the case for and against him was this offseason, and just overall our thoughts on him as a head coach after 3 years at the helm with the Colts. And then to close out the show, Jake is going to introduce his draft prospect spotlight player. We are finally going to move a little bit away from Indiana for one episode. So Jake does have a draft.
Far.
Yeah, not very far. But Jake does have a spotlight preview player here for this 2026 draft. But let's talk Shane Steichen, Jake. Not the best record through 3 seasons, 25-26, with no playoffs under his belt. So a lot of people would say, look, you are what your record says. So should there be any case for Shane Steichen past that? But I do think that there is merit in what he's been able to do on the offensive side of the football with the Colts the last couple of years, especially when you consider who he's had at quarterback, from rookie Richardson and Gardner Minshew that first season, to Richardson and Flacco that second season. And then this past year with Daniel Jones, Phillip Rivers, and Riley Leonard, the Colts have been, a top 15 offense each and every one of those years. And this past year, they were top 10 across the board with a quarterback like Daniel Jones, where, people were laughing at Daniel Jones all offseason about the Colts even considering starting him. And they're able to have a top 10 offense with him leading the way for most of the year, and a 44-year-old quarterback off the couch, and Riley Leonard, who was a 6th-round rookie. So I do think there's a lot of merit in how good of an offensive coach he is, even if he has us pulling our hair out sometimes. He is one of the better offensive coaches in football.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've seen a lot of really good from him. That's not to say there aren't plenty of things, like you mentioned it, to pull our hair out. But we have seen what it can look like without, the Colts really didn't have a lot of superstar power in the first half of the year, but they were getting superstar productivity out of their offense. Now they have Jonathan Taylor, of course, but they were putting up 450 yards routinely against teams, blowing the doors off of teams, even against good defenses. They were competing really, really well.
Like the Chargers and the Broncos defenses, who were both top 5 defenses this year. The Colts in that first half of the year just blew the doors off of them. Yeah, I completely agree there.
Exactly. Almost 500 yards against Denver. And that's, again, it's Michael Pittman Jr. is your top targeted receiver for the most part. You had Josh Downs, who was really slow to start. So it's we haven't even seen what this offense can be. And that's crazy because of how productive it was. But no, I think the fact that he is able to, he's able to kind of milk situations for as much as they're worth, especially from the quarterback position. We saw Gardner Minshew probably played the best football of his career in 2023. They were nearly in the playoffs. That team, I believe, was 9 straight games to start the year, scoring 20 points, which was the longest in the league. They scored on their first 10 possessions of this year, which was an Indy record as well. So between Gardner Minshew, Daniel Jones reviving his career and looking like a serviceable quarterback who's going to now get another huge contract, at least in terms of APY, no one would have thought Daniel Jones was going to get the bag again. And Shane Steichen really meshed well with Daniel Jones to kind of make that happen. Phillip Rivers, again, coming out of nowhere at 44 years old and with our physique to be playing pretty well overall. Riley Leonard, a 6th-round rookie, played pretty good football in 2 games against good defenses. So what he is able to do from the offensive side of the ball with quarterbacks, ones who actually fit him. Because like we have now come to see that he can't just like spin everything into gold. He's not necessarily a guy that can whisper to any quarterback, I wouldn't say. But guys who fit him well, he gets the most out of them, I would say. Yeah. And then just when you look at the offense from this year specifically, it was really pick your poison. They peppered defenses with the pass early on to just cream them with the run game in the second half. Had Jonathan Taylor leading the league in rushing. It was a legit MVP candidate. They spread the ball out so much in the passing game. And it's like the offense was so effective and such a problem for defenses that week in and week out, it's like, what are you going to try and stop? It doesn't really matter because they're going to be able to do this and this to counter if you try and stop that. So as far as offensively goes, I think he's been about as good as you could hope with the personnel that they've had.
Yeah, and I would even argue, like, defensively, like, yes, he was part of the decision-making to keep Gus Bradley around those first 2 years, but when he finally had his chance to separate from what Gus Bradley was doing on defense and kind of pick the next direction of this defense, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of Chris Ballard, because the current defense the Colts run is not at all what Chris Ballard likes, this style of defense. He likes more of that old Tampa 2, Seattle cover 3 style of defense. But Shane Steichen picked the direction of this defense with Lou Anarumo, and this was the best Colts defense they've had in the last 3 years, despite all the injuries they had on that side of the ball. Now, I know the bar wasn't super high. You're just trying to get better than what Gus Bradley's defenses were. But the direction of picking Lou Anarumo and having that on the defense side of the ball is a credit to Shane Steichen for, again, wanting more of a diverse identity on that side of the football. So I do think he brings a lot of good things to the table, especially, again, offensively. He's one of the best play callers in football, in my opinion. Maybe it's not as good as like a Kyle Shanahan where he can make it work against anybody with anybody on offense. But I think when you get into that like 6 to 10 range when it comes to play calling, I think he's certainly in that conversation. I think he's certainly in there for my book there. I think he's a good play caller. Their short yardage stuff has always been very good. They've been getting better in the red zone, I think, as well. So yeah, Shane Steichen, I think, is an offensive coach that you want to have. And that's what kind of makes the conversation of like when we all wanted to blow things up this offseason. And don't get me wrong, I'm still fully on board of sacrificing Shane Steichen to get rid of Chris Ballard. Like, I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. But it does make it difficult because it's hard to win, like consistently get close to winning in this NFL without having that offensive play caller at head coach. You know, we've seen teams kind of go through these ebbs and flows when they don't have that offensive play caller at head coach, where the most consistent teams that are always there, the 49ers, the Rams, the Chiefs, a lot of it's because they have that play caller at head coach and they don't have that turnover from year to year where they lose that play caller. So when you find a guy that you think is capable, it is hard to let that guy go, even if the results aren't perfect. Now, that's not me trying to fully defend him and saying he's some great head coach, but I understand the thought process with that. One more aspect I do think is noteworthy with Shane Steichen is they do have a lot of these little things in games, and maybe fans don't really fully appreciate this as much as a nerd like me does, but they do these little things in games to steal yards and steal points and steal opportunities from opponents. I'm thinking of, like, for instance, in that Week 18 game against Houston, where they do the fake punt and then they hurry up on the ball with the fake punt team out there and burn a timeout from, or was it a timeout? Or they got the penalty on Houston.
Yeah, 12 men on the field.
Yeah. We've seen situations with quick subs where he's stolen timeouts from opponents as well, that mattered late in games. So I think there are some really interesting aspects of his coaching in game that aren't all negative. I know the Colts are 2-7 in one-score games this year, so we'll get to some of the game management in a second, but I do think there are little things he does in game to steal points, steal opportunities, and steal timeouts from opponents, which don't make his game management that bad. And I think every coach is bad with game management. Shane Steichen, it just amplified because they were 2-7 in one-score games. But he does little things in the games to steal timeouts and steal points from opponents, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that he's aggressive, because just having a timid head coach who doesn't ever want to go for it on fourth, always is taking the field goal, always doing this stuff like punting on the opponent's side of the field. Like, I don't want that from a decision maker. Like, I want the head coach to want to go for it. Like,
Right.
you
He's
don't have
aggressive. I
much to
love it.
lose.
Yeah.
He's
You got to be
sharp, like what
aggressive.
you talk about with the little wrinkles, with finding hidden yardage and points and things like that. But he's also aggressive. And then just the message he sends in the building. I think he's the kind of coach that players can respect because they know he's all ball and they know what to expect from him day in and day out. That doesn't mean he's 100% great at communicating, which we'll get to, but I think players can easily respect a guy like him.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's graded well the last couple of years in that NFLPA survey in terms of like players respecting him as a coach. So I do think he's well liked. I think he's a good offensive mind, and there are a lot of good aspects with Shane Steichen. But coming up, we're going to dive into some of the cons, some of the negatives, and I mean, it starts right there with that record, right, Jake? 25-26, and especially the record against Houston and Jacksonville. That's where all this kind of starts with Shane Steichen.
What if sports were traded like markets? Now you could put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You could buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. But now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trades involve significant risk and are not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm.
And guys, the NFL playoffs are in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium just hits differently. The frustrating part has always been getting those tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with the logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's a hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. From browsing, comparing, and buying tickets to just took me minutes when I'm on the app. One of my favorite features is being able to view my seat before buying, so there are just no surprises whatsoever. The zone deals also stand out as well. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. I really like that fees are included up front, so the price is exactly what you see and how you pay. Knowing tickets are backed by the Gametime guarantee also gives me real peace of mind at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Clubs. You can catch our audio ad-free and get an invite to members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for our listeners of our shows. Go to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join or even gift a subscription. We are back talking Shane Steichen, kind of doing a year in review, but also doing the pros and cons of him as a coach of this Indianapolis Colts team. We talked about the positives in the first segment, mainly being it's hard to get rid of an offensive mind that can get top 10 offense out of Daniel Jones and a top 15 offense out of Gardner Minshew. We've seen other offensive minds try it, and they've struggled quite a bit. That's probably the biggest case for him. But at the end of the day, Jake, this is a coach who's 25-26, no playoffs in 3 years. Look, he was part of the decision-making, part of the brain trust that took Anthony Richardson in the top 5, and that didn't work out for the Colts. Not many coaches survive that, unless you have like a Super Bowl in your past somewhere, right? Which I guess with the Eagles, he almost won one as an assistant, but unless you're like a previous Super Bowl winning head coach, it's hard to survive 3 years with no results, and you struggle to develop a young quarterback. So I think that's kind of where the cons have to start and where they're probably going to be for most fans.
Yeah, I think he gets a lot of leeway through context of like what's gone wrong each season. He was one of the biggest champions for Anthony Richardson, but they also had to take a quarterback. They didn't necessarily have to take that one, but it's like you taking Richardson or Levis. It's probably not going to work out either way. But yeah, that the whole thing was fumbled immensely, especially when you go ahead and figure or factor in that he started right away when you had a veteran in Gardner Minshew who was kind of brought in to be that bridge, that buffer zone. But yeah, so there's that part of it, which if I'm mentioning Anthony Richardson, I'm just going to go ahead and start off here. Communication to the public, not great. The amount of mixed messages that come from Shane Steichen press conferences in relation to especially Anthony Richardson and like other players who I guess are injured. It's the language is very muddled and it's hardly ever black and white. Earlier in the year, I even got myself in trouble, kind of like going off of his language. Like, okay, if he says this player is actually practicing. And it was that way for 2 or 3 weeks until it wasn't. You know what I mean? And then there's all this stuff with Richardson where it's like, yeah, he's just a little banged up. And Richardson's like, I was crawling around my house because I was in excruciating pain. You know, so in terms of communication, he's a football guy. He's a football nerd. And sometimes the politics take a little while to kind of iron out. So when it comes to being like the CEO of the team and sending out the message, you also are the person who speaks with the media the most. So you are kind of the PR firm here. That needs some work for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just one small part of it, but yeah, it's the people skills part probably needs a little work.
Well, yeah, and I think that just the messaging to the team and also to, again, we don't know exactly what's being said to the team, but I just go back to that 2024 couple week span where we're getting the benching of Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco, and they're saying Joe Flacco is going to be our starter for the remainder of the season, and then 2 weeks later, they bench Joe Flacco for Anthony Richardson again. And just that kind of, that was like the first thing with Shane Steichen where I was like, he might be a little in over his head if we're doing this. You know, I'm not saying stubbornly make a move and stick with it, but like we got to view this more long term than if like instead of just wishy-washy with flipping like that at the quarterback position, even if it was, you know, the right move at the time, even if it was right, that it just has to be a better optically there. The next one is just a lot of fans have been coming for him for game management. I still defend him a little bit with game management because again, every football game I've watched this year, I've come away thinking that both coaches stink at game management. I think like I've yet to see a good coach with game management. So I think it's just a difficult aspect to do in a game. But when you're 2-7 in one score games and they've had some of the moments that they've had this year, I understand this being a fair criticism. And part of it for me, honestly, I know a lot of fans say he doesn't take the points enough and stuff. For me, it's the fact that he relies on his kickers too much. And I know that's just on brand for me, but yeah. I just keep going back to the Denver game and the Seattle game where we're settling for these 60-yard kicks because like it's in the range of our kicker, but I'm like, we can't be leaving it up to chance. And even then the other team, like I guess in the Denver game, they weren't getting the ball back, but like the Seattle game, even making the 60-yard kick in Seattle, you're still giving the ball back to the other team with 40-something seconds left. You know, with the way the kickoff rules are now, that's plenty of time. So at least if you're going to give the ball back to them, make the kick a little bit more manageable. So it's kind of things like that. I do think I think he's too optimistic about his kickers and his defense at times, where sometimes it's like, look, you're the offensive guru. You've been able to get these top offenses out of, you know, these quarterbacks that we've been talking about the last couple of years. Go win it with your offense. Make sure it comes down to your offense. Don't let it come down to a 60-something yard kick with no time left, or make it come down to a 60-something yard kick instead of going for it on 4th and 3 in Seattle. Like, I know Rivers wasn't playing some great football, but what, like, I'd rather go for it on 4th and 3 and have a chance to run it down to nothing and potentially kick a 40-something yard kick than kick a 60-yard kick with 47 seconds left to give the ball back to the other team. So yes, I have my gripes with game management. I don't think it's as huge a deal, but again, if you're 2-7 in one score games, something needs to improve over the next season.
Yeah, I think my biggest gripes when it comes to game days is there are times where he gets just stubbornly conservative. I've noticed like at the end of first halves, it's just specifically going for field goals. Right. Even if they're like picking up chunk plays where they could get more, they could take a shot or two at the end zone. It's no, we're just going for the field goal. That's it. And that's all. And it's like, man, it looks like you weren't prepared for this good of a drive and now you're just like, you don't have anything to try, and that's frustrating. And then something you and I have kind of gone back and forth on over the last couple of years is whether your phrase is X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's or like plays over players, what have you. There are times where I think he takes the ball out of his best player's hands just in order to execute a play that he really believes in, which is great. You should have conviction about your play designs and everything. But there's been at least like 2 or 3 times where everyone is like, where is Jonathan Taylor? And sometimes it lasts whole halves or quarters. You're like, what? Like, why are you taking the ball away from your best players? And it's been that way. It's mostly with Taylor for some reason, but we've seen it with big time pass catchers as well. Like the more reliable ones aren't getting the ball necessarily in certain situations. That I think has improved a little bit this year. I had bigger issues with it in 23 and 24. But yeah, those are things that routinely kind of drive me nuts and, lead us into the post-game press conference asking like, all right, so what was the thought here? And it's the explanation is usually, we liked the play design. We'd been working on it all week and it worked out fine. And it's like, okay, well then today when you faced another defense. So
yeah, we'll keep arguing, I think, in the future over the players versus plays thing. It's always a fun argument there. But I do completely agree that he gets too conservative at times, which is so frustrating because he's almost always like aggressive when it comes to 4th downs.
Yeah.
And going for it on 4th down and knowing what to do. But like he does get in these weird habits where it's like, we're going to get conservative. Or there's even times where I'm like, oh, cool, he's running on 3rd and 6 here because he's planning to go for it on 4th down. And then he'll opt to kick like a 53-yard field goal on 4th and 3. And I'm like, then why did you run it? Like, just throw it then if you're already going to kick the long field goal. So yeah, there are some things that kind of drive me up a wall with the conservativeness and the aggressiveness. But overall, I think there is a good argument for and against Shane Steichen coming back this year. I will say one probably, and this is probably a topic for another day, maybe one of the better arguments for keeping him going into this next season is look what's happening with the Cleveland and Arizona job searches and who they might end up getting because they are just striking out on everybody. And like Jim Schwartz, it looks like is going to get the Cleveland job or is the front runner there. Like, so like, look, I'm always of the opinion that like never don't like make a change because you're scared of downgrading. But in a market like this where there were 10 openings and there weren't that many candidates, like good candidates out there, and you could get stuck with Jim Schwartz as your head coach, maybe waiting a year is not the worst call. But let us know in the comment section below. But to close off today's show, guys, coming up in just a second, Jake is going to unveil his spotlight player of the 2026 draft for today's episode. And he's going back to a place where the Colts have had a lot of luck in recent seasons at Cincinnati University.
If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't necessarily the right fit, you know how important it is to actually get that right. But when you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page, and it helps you reach the right candidates faster. If we needed to hire someone for this show, we would probably go right to Indeed. We'd be super specific about exactly what we need as well. Real experience and not just a bunch of resume buzzwords. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and they make a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored job posts directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who actually check all your boxes. With less stress, less time, and more results, using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement that it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed.
And tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get every deduction for you. You can upload your documents, you go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it for you. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert doesn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Alrighty, everydayers, we are back talking all about Jake's prospect of the day from the 2026 NFL Draft coming up here in just a few months. We're trying to give you guys some player profiles here so you guys can be ready for the Colts day 2 picks and day 3 picks because they don't have a day 1 pick this year, or at least as of right now. So we're going to be talking about a player from Cincinnati, and I'll give you the floor here in a second, Jake, but the Colts have had a lot of luck from Cincinnati in recent years. Alec Pierce and Sauce Gardner, most notably, are from Cincinnati, but also Brian Mason was there at the same time as those two. So the Bearcats, what if we're going to add another Bearcat, Jake? We might be getting one of our better producers on the roster.
For sure. And I was hoping there was some crossover between this guy here and Brian Mason there. Unfortunately, was not. But it is Cincinnati linebacker Jake Golday. So we're obviously going to be leaning into more top 50, top 100 guys since the Colts don't have a first-round pick. But this guy, in terms of ascension, kind of has Carson Schwessinger written all over him to me. Right now, he's viewed as a round 2 pick for the most part. But if he goes and works out well and interviews well, then you could see him go as early as low round 1. I've seen projections kind of all over the place for him. But Golday, there's really not much not to like, especially with the Colts, who need pretty much a linebacker facelift. Huge frame, 6'4", 240. He's going to be 23 years old as a rookie, so a little on the older side, but you're not looking at the 24, 25-year-old guys who've been in there 6-7 years.
Well, just real quick, Jake, the Colts did take a lot of seniors last year. Remember, that was big. That was a big thing for Ballard last draft. So that might be a new thing going forward, is drafting older players. But
yeah, I mean, he's at least not the you and me talk about 24, 25-year-old guys all the time. You'd love to avoid it. But his frame is somewhat comparable to Jermaine Pratt. But he can also kind of add some more. You look at him and he's not gangly, but like you see the room to add more muscle on there. He's pretty much a true will linebacker. I don't think I saw him lined up at Mike whatsoever. And again, although we all think the Colts need like a complete overhaul at linebacker, that doesn't mean they're going to get rid of Zaire Franklin. They'll save about $5 million if they move on, but that doesn't mean they will. If they don't, I mean, regardless, Golday fits. But if they don't, then they will need someone like Golday next to Franklin. He is rangy. At 6'4", 240, those guys can often be stiff. He is not. He is very – I'm trying to find the right adjectives for him, but he's very fluid. Like, he can move horizontally, vertically. Like, he has got it all. He can attack downhill, but he can also get to places quickly out in space, out in coverage. And obviously we talked a lot about how the Colts were super vulnerable from the linebacker position over the middle of the field. He's a guy who gets there quickly and he understands what he is seeing. But for me, he kind of checks a lot of the boxes that I like in linebackers. He's not passive. I don't really like linebackers that let things come to them. I want him to go make things happen. He's got a background from Central Arkansas, as he's got some edge in his past. And that has maybe curtailed his development at linebacker a little bit now that he is a linebacker with Cincinnati. But he's still kind of learning on the go there, but he is a more advanced guy blitzing at this point now. He's very determined and confident when he sees. And since he's kind of played in the trenches a little bit, he's pretty good at hand fighting and countering and getting off blocks. He's also another thing I really like about linebackers. When you're in the middle, there's an inside run. A lot of these guys let themselves get taken out. he does what I call collapses down on the ball carrier. He will take him and the blocker and just run into the gap and fall down to end the run. He is the type of guy who is aggressive and does what it takes to make the play pretty much every time. Sure tackler. There's not much not to like.
Awesome. And while I'm going to say my little spiel here, Jake, I'm going to have you think of a pro comp for him. We want to have pro comps in here.
Okay.
So think of your vibe. It doesn't have to be perfect. A little bit of a vibe here that you're going for while I give my little spiel. But I do like a player like this fit on the Colts defense because the Colts have two distinct different linebacker positions. One is the Mike, the off ball. Think like an Aiden Fisher from Indiana. We have to always have the Indiana tie-in here, guys. But think like an Aiden Fisher type player that's smart, savvy, good coverage guy that you want to have at Mike. And then you want to have just that rabid dog on a leash, essentially, with the other one. A guy who's going to attack downhill. When you go to these under looks, you're going to have them playing some edge. And the Colts also had a very high six-man pressure rate last year. So they like to bring linebackers on these diverse pressures on third down. So you have a player like this where, again, you can let him just be the aggressive playmaker that you want him to be, a guy who can be your tackle for a loss type of machine on defense. I think that would be a really good idea to get a young player like that and then maybe go like more of a veteran route for the other linebacker position if you move off of both Franklin and Pratt. We know if Franklin's here, he's going to be that other position. But at least getting a young, fast player that can make plays in the backfield, I think that would be a great fit for this Colts defense. And I like the edge background as well with how the Colts use their penny fronts and under fronts and these different looks to get linebackers off the edge. But who do you have as like just a rough pro comp for now, Jake? It doesn't have to be perfect as of right now.
Yeah. So it's tough. You look, you could say Jihad Campbell from last year, not to that degree.
I'm all in, Jake. You sold me. That's why we do pro comps. I'm sold.
They do a lot of things pretty similarly. I mean, they rush off the edge very well. They have that edge background, but they move so well out in space in the middle of the field and coverage too. But again, I'm a fan of an aggressive attacking linebacker as well. So a guy who gets off of blocks, you don't see him just rendered completely useless, because that's another thing I hate to see in linebackers as well. Like, try and find some way to get free and make the play and at least stay involved and stay alive to some degree.
Yeah.
And he does that. I think he would be an instant fan favorite here, especially from the Midwest, from Cincinnati. People in Indy love that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, I need your next comps to be from like early 2010s guys that we grew up scouting and stuff. Okay. Like that. We need you to go like crazy with that stuff in the future. Like,
well, see, being a will linebacker, being a will linebacker changes stuff, because I used to be in love with Mike linebackers.
Right.
Like the year, I mean, Darius Leonard was a will, but like the year that him and Sky Moore came out, I was like, oof, that was as good as it gets.
You should have dropped a Fred Warner comp on this guy. It would have been great.
I didn't like Fred Warner wasn't too much on my radar. I'll admit that. But like a guy like Denzel Perriman, loved him. Holy crap, did I love Denzel Perriman. And Reuben Foster is my number one all-time favorite linebacker prospect.
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
Find me in a Landon Roberts next time, okay, Jake? I need like a 260-pound bowling ball who can't turn and only flies downhill and kills everything in sight. That's what you need to bring me. But no, I think that Jake Golday here is a very interesting player. And I just realized you picked a guy with your same first name, so that's probably part of why you.
But see, I don't like other guys named Jake, though. So like that means he's exceptional.
There we go. We love it, guys. We love it. Well, thanks again to all of you for tuning in today to Locked On Colts. We'll be back tomorrow for the Daily Show and tonight on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. So make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Colts so you get all the latest episodes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on social media. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Colts ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and much more. Head to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join the club. Thank you guys again for listening today, and we'll be back tonight with the Colts Squad Show.